According to Bill Kauffman, true conservatives have always resisted the imperial and military impulse. It drains the treasury, curtails domestic liberties, breaks down families, and vulgarizes culture. He pays tribute to these conservatives in his book, Ain't My America? The Long Noble History of Anti-War Conservatism and Middle American Anti-Imperialism. He spoke at a Cato Book Forum May 8, 2008. This is a segment of a longer event available for download at cato.org.
Back in 1948, as the long, dark night of the Cold War was descending, a young Taft Republican named Jack Kerouac wrote, "The war scare, I think, is just for the sake of squeeze-playing Congress into voting universal military training in the Marshall Plan. It's a dirty administration with dirty tricks, creating emergencies for its own political ends, and all tied up with the brass. I think we should arm and just dare anybody to attack, but I don't think we should be the aggressors. That wouldn't pan out." Jack hit the road. Truman got his Marshall Plan and a draft, but not UMT. And 60 years on, we're seeing how well being the aggressors is panning out. This isn't Jack's America either. How feeble the voices of dissent sound today. Edgar Lee Masters, the Spoon River Anthology poet of Southern Illinois and a great states' rights Democrat, recalled of the Spanish-American War. There was great opposition to the war over the country, but at that time an American was permitted to speak out against a war if he chose to do so. Masters had lived through the frenzied persecution of anti-war dissidents under the liberal Democrat Woodrow Wilson, beside whom George W. Bush looks like Nat Hentoff. Masters had little patience with gilded platitudes about wars for human rights and the perfection of the species. He knew that war meant death and taxes, those proverbial inevitabilities that become shining virtues in the fog of martial propaganda. Masters would be appalled by the contraction of the range of permissible political opinion in this country. Why should the limits to political discourse be demarcated by Arthur Schlesinger's ghost and Bill Bennett's ghost writer? What an impoverished and specious political culture it is that bars the anti-federalist, loco-foco, populist, old right, voluntaristic, new left traditions of American dissent. These are the streams in which I swim, not the main streams to be sure, but little creeks that have just as valid a claim to the land. In the meandering course of this book, better a dozen digressions in one point, I happily take in other strays too, and look out other vistas. The world is far too lovely a place to walk through it along a party line. No ideas but in things, said William Carlos Williams, the New Jersey poet patriot. Well, I say no ideas but in people. So this book is in part a series of profiles of figures who are not so much representative as extraordinary. Black Jack Randolph, the brilliant and eccentric Virginia Tertium Quid, who once proposed Greek love to Old Hickory, Andrew Jackson. I'm betting that one went unconsummated. I write about Thomas Corwin, the Ohio Whig who delivered perhaps the most fiery anti-war speech in congressional history, when on February 11, 1847, he told a hushed Senate, "If I were a Mexican, I would tell you, have you not room in your own country to bury your dead men? If you come into mine, we will greet you with bloody hands and welcome you to hospitable graves." Talk about not supporting the troops. Yet Senator Corwin was dispatched not to Coventry, not to Siberia, not to Elba, but to the cabinet of Millard Fillmore, the peace president. Queen Victoria once said that Fillmore was the most handsome man she had ever met, and yet he was par for the upstate New York course. No Snickers, please. I write also of the virtuous Moorfield Story, Boston Brahmin, and president of both the NAACP and the Anti-Imperialist League, and of Claude Kitchin, the Democratic Majority Leader from North Carolina who took on Woodrow Wilson over U.S. entry into the First World War. "It takes neither moral nor physical courage to declare a war for others to fight," said Kitchin, anticipating by 90 years the incredible lightness of fleeing by Dick Cheney. The Republican Party has been home to several of the noble souls I write of. Justin Morrill, George Frisbee Hoare, Robert A. Taft. Men who, at least on occasion, stood for peace, for staying out of foreign quarrels, for permitting the natives of distant islands to follow their own lights rather than submitting to the ministrations of the Great White Father in Washington. Alas, locating the anti-war wing of today's Republican Party is like looking for the Juice Newton wing in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Bill Kauffman is author of Ain't My America, The Long Noble History of Anti-War Conservatism and Middle American Anti-Imperialism. The full event is available for viewing at cato.org.